he has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Lauren Norris.
It's coming. It's coming. It's coming right at you. It's coming right down the track. It's coming right down the barrel. It's about to land. It is coming. I don't care if you like it or not. I don't care if you want it or not. I don't care if you choose it or not. Change is coming. The question is, how do you approach transitions in your life as a leader, as a team member, as a family member, as a friend? If you know that change is coming, that transition is inevitable, how do you go about approaching that transition? That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. If you've been in leadership for, 10 minutes, you've probably already seen some change. In fact, becoming a leader was probably a change. Getting that moment to stand in the spotlight and have somebody look at you and go, all right, what are you going to do about it? That may have been the first moment of transition. The first time you hired an employee. First time you signed a contract and had to put your name on the bottom of it and realize the weight of that contract is on me. Whether it's delivered or it's not delivered, whether the product is there or the product is not there, whether it's right or it's wrong, whether it's good or it's bad, whether policies and politics are impacted or not, my name is on that agreement. I got to do it. I got to fulfill my half of it. Now, maybe that's the mortgage. Maybe it's your first car loan. Maybe it's the non-disclosure agreement that you signed when you took a job and knew you're going to be dealing with secret material. Maybe it's that intellectual property form that you have to sign because they know you're smart and they hired you to work for them and they don't want you to think things up that don't belong to them. Or if you think things up, they're going to take it anyway. Intellectual property rights, you got to sign those over. That may be this first sign of transition or change in your life when all of a sudden the thoughts inside your head don't belong to you anymore. There are jobs that you can take where that's a pretty normal thing. Certain industries more so than others. But what other kind of changes might you face? Could be the loss of a loved one. Could be the loss of a business partner or a teammate that you've counted on all this time. Their synergy has kept you going, has driven you forward. They come up with these new ideas and this new way of implementing things. And every time you dive off the ledge with them, it's like wings just sprout, parachutes come, and life is grand. And one day you jump off the ledge and realize they didn't jump. You dive into this new project and they didn't follow. What do you do now? What's the course of action when what you counted on isn't the same? See, I know leaders who, in their personality style, in their character, their way of being, they prefer the status quo. Don't rock the boat. Don't upset the apple cart. Whatever it is, leave it that way, even if it's wrong. Even if the entire world around us has evolved to something new, even if the way of doing business isn't like that anymore, leave it the way it was. You might think back to companies like, I don't know, Blockbuster. They had a way of doing things. They had big investors. They had a lot of money. They had deep pockets. They had huge cash flow. And then one day, just in the course of a couple of months, this new methodology for delivering movies to the living room, not the theater. They've been doing that for years. Most people don't go to the movies to see the movie. They go to the movie for the experience of getting out of the house and having the popcorn and watching it on an enormous screen that most people don't want to put in their home. That's why movie theaters haven't completely died yet. But I'll tell you, the ones that are suffering are the ones that are not keeping up with the change. That we can go to a movie now and order almost any kind of food that you want. Hot wings, pizza, burgers, hot dogs, nachos. And they will bring it to your seat after you're seated in a comfy recliner chair that almost makes you want to take a nap if it's not a good movie. That's a little different than those Spirit Airlines kind of seats that we used to sit in the movie theater. In fact, we recently stopped at a theater and we were like, wow, that's like half the price of the tickets of everybody else. And so my wife immediately went online and started reading some of the reviews. And multiple reviews said uncomfortable chairs, sticky floors, stinky place to be, not a good environment. The popcorn was cold. The drinks were flat. And you're like, oh, that's why it's half price. And then one of the comments in the reviews actually said, I'd rather drive 30 miles to the next town and pay twice as much for tickets because the experience is worth the investment. Okay, this is a movie theater whose owners are still trying to scrape in what little profit they can, and they are terrified of the change or the transition that the industry is telling them is necessary. They're holding on to that last bit of customer base who hasn't given up on them, maybe because they're friends, maybe because they're local, maybe because they don't know there's another alternative. Maybe just because they like that cheap price, even though for just half more they could get such a better experience. That's what happens when you don't like change, when you don't face change or transition well. Now, sometimes transition comes because outsiders look at your industry, look at your business, look at your relationships and go, yeah, it shouldn't be like that. There have been laws written about everything from healthcare. You could call it reproductive healthcare if you wish to. I don't, but you could say that. From healthcare to where you get your healthcare to how much you pay for your healthcare. That policies that are written by people who have nothing to do with healthcare. I mean, they literally don't. And not only the people who write the policies, but the policies they wrote, they have nothing to do with healthcare. They have to do with manipulating economies in certain demographics. Have nothing to do with healthcare. Zero zip zilch nada. But see, if you can write a policy and put a name on it, like the Inflation Reduction Act, if you can put a name on it that makes everybody go, yay, that transition is accepted, even though it's forced and unwelcomed. And when you see the impact of it, you're like, why would we do that? We wouldn't agree to that. That was such a bad idea, such a bad policy, such a bad plan. That was not a change anybody wanted. But the result was not what was anticipated. It was not what was sold. It was not what was described in the pitch. And maybe you've taken a job like that. Maybe as a leader, you've been told, well, the team is like this, and the objective is like this, and the goal is like this. Go for it. And when you get there, the team is nothing like that. And the objective, well, it's near impossible. And the goal, absolutely unachievable. I've told this story here before. I actually took a job during the dot-com bust, left a company that I'd only been with for a couple of years, and took this job because in the write-up, and I had it in writing and I still have it somewhere in an email, it said, if you're at goal of your sales target, your base pay plus commission at goal is $80,000 a year. This was in the early 2000s. And I was like, no, 99, 2000. I was like, that's a good paycheck. I'll take 80,000, and I think I can meet goal. So I walk in the door of the company, and I get into my second, third, fourth, fifth day, and I'm asking myself, how many of these people around me are already at goal? Because I've only been here a couple of days, but they're like 3/4 of the way through the month. And so I just asked the question, how many people are at goal? And the sales manager's like, well, that's none of your business. I'm like, okay, well, so, given that I've only been here 2 days, I haven't even been to training yet, how much should I have sold at this point in the month in order for my paycheck at the end of the month to reflect that $80,000? Because that's my goal, is 80 grand in the bank at the end of the year. And the sales manager said, well, you should have sold X by this date. And I'm like, okay, so is that the norm kind of for everybody in the room? Is everybody at goal? And again, none of your business. Fortunately, I started on a Wednesday, and so by Friday, while I'm asking this question, it's the end of the day. Monday morning, I walk in, and new whiteboards have been installed. 75 feet of whiteboard takes up the entire east wall of the building. And from top to bottom are the names of all the salespeople. This region, then that region, then national, and all the salespeople with the end of the pay period listed across the top. And then underneath that, what percent to goal they are. And so if you have a new sale on this date, you write in that sale, and then you can go to the end of the week and you can see. But the salespeople don't write those numbers in. Sales management does. And now all of a sudden there's this compare and contrast. And I'm looking at all the people in my region and I'm going, looks to me like on day 25 of the 30-day cycle, we have one person at goal. So the team wasn't capable of reading the objective, or the goal wasn't achievable. I'm not sure, but this is a major change from what I expected. I left a good solid job with incredible training and a good solid base pay to come take a lesser base pay with the guarantee of a higher if I could make goal. And yet I get here and realize nobody is able to achieve that yet. Does that mean that everybody they've hired is questionable in their performance ability, or there's something wrong with their training, or there's something wrong with the product we're selling? What exactly is it? And so this transition for me became a fearful thing. All of a sudden, I've given up pretty good security to move into, So when I start seeing this stuff on the board, I just plowed in. I did what I do as a salesperson, and I started grinding. Well, it was a full 30 days before I could go to training. But at the end of that first 30 days, I was 300% to my goal quota. That number that they said, this is where you're supposed to be, I was 300% of that number. And I got my check. And I did some basic math. And I said, if I get this check times 12, I'm less than 50 grand. Let me ask this question. If I only did 100% and not 300%, what would this check have been? They did some math and they came back to me and said it would have been this. And I said, that and what you put in writing in an email to me that I would be making 80 grand, those are nowhere near each other. In fact, I would have to be over 1,000% to budget based on the pay scale that you have right now and the commission structure that you have to reach 80 grand. And meaning I have to do 10 times more than your best performer right now. Is it doable? Can it be done? And I got a deer in the headlights look. Then I got a signing bonus check that nobody else got because they realized I could perform and they weren't going to be anywhere near paying me what they claimed they were if we kept this up. But in the next month, all the goals stayed the same. And I looked at it and I said, so if I'm at 100% to goal and I'm still not going to make anywhere near, and I'm not going to get that bonus check over and over again, what's the point of busting my back for the first 30 days? And so the rest of the time that I was at that company, their policies, their procedures, the way they managed the team caused me to perform at a level where I would wait till 5 days before the pay period was over because I knew I could reach 100% in less than 5 days. The rest of the time I did study, I did research, I did homework, I read books, I mentored other people, I trained others in sales. Not my job, but I had fun doing it. And usually about day 25, my sales manager would come to me and go, "You're at 0%. You've got to get to 100 by the end of the week." I'm like, "Not a problem." Why don't you do it on the first 5 days? Why would I? My paycheck is the same whether I do it day 1 through 5 or 5 through 10 or 10 through 15 or 15 through 20 or 25 through 30. It doesn't matter. Paycheck's exactly the same. And evidently the paycheck doesn't matter if I'm at 100%, 110%, 185%, or 500%. So you have not incentivized me. When I left, the policy changed, but the company didn't last either. Can't imagine why. It's really sad, though, when you see policies that are made by people who are outside the life. They don't understand the impact that it's going to make. It sounds good. It looks good on paper, perhaps, but it doesn't function well. Those kind of changes, those kinds of transitions, they're inevitable. They're going to happen. They're going to happen to you. They're going to happen to me. They're going to happen in our business. They're going to happen in the way. I tell the story often. I heard this from years and years ago. Many of you don't even know what a fax machine is, but a fax machine is a printer connected to your phone. And literally somebody would call your phone, but they would have these tones in the back, sounding like you got mail. But it would actually print something out of your machine and leave it on the table waiting for you. Early in the day, instead of a regular sheet of paper with a regular inkjet, it was thermal paper, and that stuff was very expensive. And there was a business that would sell fax distribution advertising. And so you would call this guy and say, "Hey, I want to fax to everybody in this city about our $5 car wash today." And you would pay him a certain amount of money based on the number of phone numbers that he had access to sending a fax to. And once you paid him, design your artwork, send it to him, people wake up all over town the next day with a little piece of paper they've been spit out by their fax machine that says $5 car wash, $3 foot-long subs, whatever it is. And the people who ran the businesses got a bunch of people together with a petition, and they went to the President of the United States and said, "This has got to stop. It's just wasting so much paper. It's an ecological problem. It's wasting all this thermal. It's got to stop. Please make it stop. Too many faxes are coming in that we didn't ask for. It's unsolicited soliciting." So with a stroke of a pen, the opportunity to advertise via fax machine went poof. One policy change, one stroke of a pen, one executive order. And the next day, the guy who ran that business, who had several hundred employees who processed those things, who made the ads and made them go out through the machines, they were all unemployed. And he's several $1 million in debt. And what was a couple $100,000 a month business, poof. That, my friends, is transition. It's coming. There are going to be industries, especially with new ESG scores that have been put in place in Europe, that will, through the big banking, through the big industry, through the multinational corporations that you deal with, where you buy your steel or you buy your chemicals or you ship your products. If that company has tentacles in the US and in Europe, that company now has obligations under the ESG scores that are being used in Europe to determine whether or not you get to do business. Or capitalism and independent property rights and all these, those are normal in America. They're part of our Constitution. They're part of our pedigree. They are who our society and our culture is founded around. But that's not the case in other places. Well, now if you work with a company that maybe they do global shipping, they have expectations of how you behave socially, governmentally, environmentally, and they can choose to not do business with you. So if you make a widget and you ship that widget all over the world, but you don't live up to the standards of the social scores, the social behaviors, the political correctness that those people over there said you should, suddenly you don't get to do business anymore. Change is coming. Transition is coming. In case you hadn't noticed it, there are these little things now called AI bots. They monitor everything that you're saying. They're listening to everything that I'm saying right now. I know you think that's a stretch. You think it's some kind of conspiracy theory. Ask yourself this. If you're watching on either LinkedIn or Facebook platforms, you'll notice that while I'm talking, someone is listening to every word that I'm saying and they're typing it up. It's being transcribed as we go. Who do you think might be doing that? I don't pay anybody to sit in my office, in my studio, and type this stuff up as I'm talking. No, it's being typed up by bots, which means somebody's listening. And those same bots have the ability to determine if I'm standing here holding something in my hand that I shouldn't be. In fact, the policy starts, I think it's June 18th on YouTube, that if you're holding something in your hand that you shouldn't be, your live stream will be immediately cut. Yeah. So they get to decide what you get to see, what you get to say, what you get to hear, what you get to read. They, policymakers, they, decision makers. You didn't ask them. You didn't ask them to do it, but change is coming. And for me, change is coming on Monday. Transition, a new thing, new ideas. We're going to try it again. We're going to try it differently. This podcast has been in this studio for just over a year now. In this studio, in this same space, every day. Prior to that, for almost 5 years, it was a studio in my home. And prior to that, a studio in my home. And prior to that, a studio in my home. Because it's been around since 2016. I've shot this podcast every day from my studio, either in my home or in my office. Starting Monday, we're taking the show on the road. We will be at a different location probably just about every time you see this podcast. And that's going to open up some doors for new conversations. Might even add some extra interviews to the Leading Leaders podcast. Might find some new topics to talk about that are spur of the moment, right in the heat of the moment, in the thick of things. But it's also going to expand what we do with Story Power TV and Transforming Grace TV. And if you haven't seen this one, Lead the Narrative, that's where we dive into all the stuff that may not be popular on your primary social medias, but OBBM Network TV, they cover and they carry everything we record. Why? Because they believe in what we're doing, and they know that change is coming. Every leader's got to look at approach, almost like you might a cute dog. You've got to approach transition with careful excitement. It would be really cool if you bent down to that little puppy and they jumped up and licked your hand and said, I want to be petted by you. But that may not be the case. You may reach down to pet that puppy and get a... True story. I've lived it. And you might find that when that puppy bites you, you turn back to the person who was with the puppy and you go, I thought you said your dog didn't bite. And they say, it's not my dog. I'm not responsible for the transition that you're facing. I'm not responsible for the change that you find to be inevitable and unrewarding. Some change is rewarding. Some change is challenging. Some transitions you look at and you're like, wow, so glad we went through that. Some are devastating. Some changes and transitions are policies made by people who are not affected by the policies they make. But they're devastating to others, to entire cities, societies, cultures. Been to LA lately? San Francisco, Detroit, Chicago, New York, Texas border. Policies made by people who are not affected by their policies. But they bring change, they bring transition. As a leader, as a strong leader, you've got to look forward to these changes and transitions. They are inevitable. Some of them you cannot stop. They are unavoidable. And look for the reward. You've got to figure out, where do I pivot? Where should I land? What's next? How do I move through this? What if I wake up tomorrow and all of it is different? It could happen. Are you aligned with the right people to make that change palatable? Are you aligned with people who can stand through that transition with you, who believe in what you're doing and where you're going? It's a good question. And it's one that really only you can answer, but you better get busy answering it. Change is coming. It's inevitable. Transition, it's required. If you don't evolve, you die. Like a bad movie theater. But approach that change, that transition, that new opportunity with these things in mind. If you know what your core values are, if you know what your principles are, and you know what your purpose is, those things will survive any change if you hold on to them. Hold on to your core values, your principles, and your purpose. and you can survive any change. Approach it with careful excitement, though. Be excited about what the new opportunity is on the other side of this change, this transition. It's coming. You can't stop it. But you can be a change maker, or you can be changed against your will. That's your choice. I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, or Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Lauren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Lauren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Lauren will serve you well.